Hi everyone, this is Michael Teo here, the founder of Thriving Talents. We are passionate to develop talents everywhere around the world. And as promised, welcome to another episode of talentbreakthrough.com. Now, truth be told, we have experimented on a lot of platforms because we had some technical glitches today, but thank God we are using Hangouts right now. And I am so honored and glad that Ken, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your patience. You know, technology failed us today, but we made sure that we're able to host you here as well. So thank you again, Ken, for joining.
Good morning.
What time is it over there in Canada?
Where I am, it is 9:30 a.m. on Thursday. So we're in the same day, just a different time zone.
Yep. Well, we're right here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, the beautiful capital city, and it's 9:30 p.m. our time. So it's really nice to have you here, Ken, really. So just to give you a little bit of outlook, and especially for those of you who are actually following us right now, some key takeaways that we'll be discussing with Ken. And I will take this opportunity to introduce Ken's impressive profile and also one of the main reasons why I've invited him over. But before that, let's talk about the key takeaways. So for the key takeaways today is we'll be exploring with Ken about how online learning is now becoming really a must-have, especially in a lot of corporate companies, even for individual learning today. And I'm sure Ken would agree with me right here because he owns one of the top companies that does online learning. Would you agree with me on that, Ken?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Excellent. So we'll be talking about how do you actually manage your own online learning schedule and how do you actually manage to create a habit for online learning. We'll also be looking at what are some of the pitfalls that normally people have, especially when online learning, for example, in Malaysia's context, is still considered really new. It's still considered like it's refreshing, like it's a trend. But we also receive a lot of feedback that people get a little bit demotivated when they try to learn online. So how do we create a consistent habit for them to continue learning? And last but not least is we'll be talking about how do we make the best of online learning. So now, Ken, without further ado, I'm just going to take this opportunity, great honors, to introduce your profile. So Ken has more than 30 years of creating and managing customer experience, spreading across people, process, and technology, and contributing his time in learning and development for some Fortune 500 or even Forbes 500 top companies. He's an expert in an accredited competency-based learning and formed his own company, Orion Learning, almost 10 years ago. So you could see they have amassed a decade worth of valuable experiences. Orion Learning offers over 900 accredited digital learning courses, programs, and examinations, allowing students to achieve milestones in competency-based learning in areas such as customer service, project management, service management, change management, and finance management. If I could say, Ken, these are all the, I would say, bloodlines for companies. These are all the main topics that companies need to learn, or they want their staff to learn in order to keep the company afloat, to keep the company growing. So I want to thank you again so much for joining us here today, Ken.
No problem. I'm glad to be here.
And also just to share, I had the chance to meet Ken in the Human Resource Development Forum in Malaysia late last year. I knew I need to get him on talentbreakthrough.com, and I'm very happy that he's here with us. Now, Ken, let's go straight to the point, okay? Let's talk about online learning. In your perspective, seeing that you have amassed 30 years of experience, you're leading Orion Learning, 10 years, a decade, solid, strong track record of online learning. In your point of view, what is online learning? If you could just give a rough background, what is online learning?
So online learning is any learning that is delivered using an electronic medium. And it could be a webinar, just like what we're doing today. It could be using an LMS. It could be using videos or a full-blown course delivered through some platform, like a learning management system, or the new sort of chatter over here is a learning record store. And a learning record store is a little bit different from an LMS in the sense that a learning record store is almost like a learning marketplace, and it could be a marketplace for an organization or an educational institution. But all all e-learning is learning using technology. And so that could mean a tablet or a desktop or a laptop or a combination thereof, using different forums like a webinar.
Right. Ken, I have a question to ask you right here. Like, we understand that in the United States or in Canada, where you're from, in most developed countries, online learning is seen to be like a staple. It is like the requirement for an integrated employee learning experience, right? However, right now in Asia, a lot of people are saying that online learning is catching up. It is becoming a trend. Would you agree with that? Like, you have traveled to Malaysia, you have been through all around the world in Asia. Do you think that Asia is lagging behind in terms of online learning, in your perspective?
I'm not going to say that they're lagging behind, but what I'm going to say is it's the same perspective that people have here. So when let's just talk about corporate training, like an employee, you have a bunch of employees and you need to train them.
Right.
When you hire somebody, you want them to learn product and service training. You're not interested in teaching them a whole bunch of university theory. Fair statement?
Right.
Okay, so product and service training traditionally is always done in the classroom. The company usually has trainers, and all they teach you to do is how to answer the phone the way the company wants you to answer the phone, what to say to your customers, and to either physically take an order or make a sale. And that's it, or support. Right. However, where companies fail and where they are struggling is delivering competency-based learning, which is not specifically product and service training. It is things such as PMP certification or Prince2 certification courses. A company has difficulty integrating that into their sort of education, process, simply because they don't have the background in those courses. And when they do hire somebody to come in and teach them, well, in North America, I'll just use PMP as an example. A company actually has to pay about $10,000 US per person per week to train them on PMP. And employers actually pay that here. If you took it online and you were ready for it, you could take that course for a fraction of the price, and you'd have access to the course for up to a year, which would allow you to go and write your exam and still have study material left over.
Right.
So to answer your question about the lag, it's a lag that affects and is affecting everybody everywhere, because they are trying to bridge the gap between product and service training versus competency-based job skills training. Job skills are not and is not product and service training. Job skills are the techniques of what makes you successful at what you do. And that's where the gap is. And that gap exists even here in North America.
Right. I have a question for you, Ken, because based on your profile, you are very renowned in what we call the competency-based learning. Now, what is competency-based learning, and how is it different from any other learning? That's the first part of my question. The second part of my question is, how do you integrate competency-based learning with online learning? Because that's what you're doing right now. Would you care to elaborate?
Okay, so I sort of touched on this a little bit just a few minutes ago, so I'm gonna come back to it. Competency-based learning is courses or topics that are specifically designed to improve your ability or job skills. It's not the same as teaching you how to answer the phone. It's not the same as teaching you the culture of a company. That really is product and service training. Competency-based learning is your certifications that you go and achieve. It would be equivalent to people who go to university or college. People who go to university and college, those are competency-based skills. They do not teach you how to necessarily use those skills in a real life. They don't necessarily teach you how to interact within a company's culture. They don't teach you how to bridge the competency versus product and service training. And so competency-based learning is specifically to improve your job skills, but not your knowledge of how a company works, if that makes sense. There's a big difference. And you'll find that the biggest distinction is Competency-based job skills usually are accredited or should be accredited by an association or an institution, an educational institution, or a collective association of industry sector like people. So we'll use oil and gas. The oil and gas sector in Malaysia is massive. So, you've got Petronas as your biggest employer per se in oil and gas, but you've got a whole bunch of other players. Collectively, even under the HRDF umbrella, there's an oil and gas sector area. And that area could actually go off and create their own curricula for individuals who participate in education in that sector. That unto itself could be determined or defined as competency-based learning. It does not teach a customer service person working for Petronas how to sell a barrel of oil.
Right.
It doesn't teach them about the culture of Petronas. And I'm using that as an example simply because it's top of mind from a guy who's only been to Malaysia once who doesn't know enough. So I'm trying to make it more applicable in the way that I'm expressing it so that you'll understand it. But competency-based learning is how to become knowledgeable and certified, so pursuing certification type skills, versus what Petronas would teach you, just how to be a Petronas employee.
Right, right. So would you agree that competency-based learning are skills that you learn that are transferable even if you work with other companies? So it's basically your skill instead of a skill that is only unique to your employer at that time. Is it something like that?
Yes, yes. And what I will go so far as to say that there's a third component which is very individual, and that is technique. Technique is a combination and is sort of the bridge between competency-based training and working for an employer and getting their product and service training. So when you work, Domino's has a massive call center in Malaysia. And when you work at Domino's, you're taking orders for pizzas and chicken wings and all kinds of wonderful things. But I'll tell you what, they teach you how to be a better person at it. So when you as a customer are calling them, they feel valued, they feel as if you care, and honestly, they answer and do it very quickly. But they don't teach you how to be a better person.
Right.
They don't teach you how to learn, certain competency skills in terms of getting a university degree. So a person who has competency-based skills always keeps that with them because the certification or the diploma or the certificate stays with that individual regardless of who they work for. Now, whether or not they actually get to use those competency-based skills always depends on the job that they have with their employer or with their employer. But I mean, employees, all they want is training and education, but they want transferable skills.
Excellent.
Telling me how to answer the phone. Every employer is going to tell me how to answer the phone. Every employer is going to teach me their own culture, sometimes the easy way, sometimes the hard way. Yep. But at the end of the day, my competency-based skills and the techniques that I've learned through other employers will help shape how I approach that employer.
Excellent. Thank you, Ken. Ken, back to online learning. Thank you for giving that explanation about competency-based learning, how we integrate it now online. I believe for the online platforms, it has made it a lot easier. Now, Ken, just the first opening question about online learning, directly diving in. We understand that in Malaysia, we have started implementing some online learning simulations like video learning, quizzes that you tick the boxes. Maybe if you could share with us, what are the different types of online learning that you have seen before? Because maybe from those types that you have shared, we may not have seen them here yet, but you may have seen it in North America. Or what are the types that are in development right now? Please do share.
Okay, so for example, there are many different ways of doing assessments and or testing for learning, and there's many different forums and types of learning, and I sort of categorize them down into the following. And before I go too far down my lengthy explanation, which I'll try to keep short, most people in North America have a very strange misconception that online training is instant and immediate, which means in 1 hour, I can learn how to be a surgeon.
Okay, I
That
wouldn't want to
that
be
is
the operating table with that surgeon.
exactly. Same thing is a lot of people in North America think that I can watch YouTube and I can be an airline pilot. I can fly a jet. And it is so wrong. It's so crazy. And that's why we have what we call here Google doctors and Wikipedia doctors. I kid you not. Because if you have something wrong, you go on Google and you research it. Oh, it looks like this and it sounds like that. Okay, now I have stage 4 cancer and I'm going to start self-medicating myself. And it just really is not cool. So
Right.
when we talk about online learning, I do categorize things into different ways. One, it gets back to competency-based learning. These are skills that are transferable. You're going to keep with you forever. Then you're going to have product and service training, which is usually specifically geared to an employer. And then you're going to have various and sundry other types of training, which I call, it's really not training at all, and it's not learning. It is just general information. And general information are things about how do you do this? And you can Google how do you do this, and you get a video, and you feel as if it's part of learning, but the presenter or whoever has created it does it in such a way that you feel as if you're either in a game show or you're in a video or you're in a cartoon. But the bottom line is I call it information type learning because it's more about the entertainment than it is about the information. And that type of learning does have a place in the learning and development world. I'm not going to say that it doesn't because I think it does, but I do not think it needs to be the mainstream approach. That's the 3 categories. So that's number 1. Number 2, in North America, most millennials, and I am not a millennial, but I have, I trust me, I've worked enough with them and I get it. I tend to be very quiet around them because the more they talk, the more I learn. We actually, since the 60s, have really fine-tuned something that I call Sesame Street learning. And for most people, not everybody knows who Sesame Street is, but in North America, it is a children's 1-hour TV show or 2-hour TV show that was really popular, that started in the 60s. And as millennials grew up, they basically sat in front of their TVs and watched it, and then they got iPads when they came out, et cetera, et cetera. But Sesame Street learning is, I can teach you anything you need to learn in less than 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
2
So,
minutes.
yeah, 2 minutes, because on television, 2 minutes is a long time. So
That's right.
they have sat there since they were 6 months old, watching television, watching Sesame Street, learning how to be a kid, learning how to count in 2 minutes, learning about the seasons in 2 minutes. And so, generally speaking, millennials are incredibly impatient. And they're very
Right.
impatient because we're programmed for them to be impatient. And
Makes
yet,
sense.
millennials, when they are interested in something, they are more tenacious than a dog on a bone.
Right.
They will constantly, literally go after a situation or a topic, and they will research, and they will find, and they will communicate, and they will cross-check a subject just so that they can have a very well-rounded perspective on a topic. In my day, listen, the fact that anybody even talked to you, that was the answer. Okay, that was the honest to God's truth, and we didn't discredit them.
Right.
Nowadays, it's got to be quick, it's got to be fast, and it's got to be thorough. And millennials are tenacious. So
Right.
never underestimate them. And 9 times out of 10, just give them information and let them digest it and come back to you. That's why e-learning is better for a millennial than classroom training, because they can go and hit a broader perspective, provided the information is there, online presented clearly in a structured forum and in a structured format. So there's theory and practical application, and then assessment. Let's talk about assessment very quickly. Assessment does not mean give them 10 questions that are multiple choice, true, false, true, false. Practical assessments really should be a combination of fact-based statements that you have true, false, but also you can have multi-level type assessment questions where, given this as a situation, the correct answer would be one of the following, and you give them a situation and they can answer it. But it's the word for that actually just went right out of my head. I can't remember the word for it, but you can actually do quality assessments online almost better than you could in a classroom, because when you have a classroom setting, an instructor will say, what is the right response for this situation? And everybody yells out the answer. But in reality, you're only listening for what the right answer is. In reality, for online learning, you could actually see 3 different other scenarios that may help shape your learning,
Right.
even though they're the wrong answer. So you get to know, oh, that is the wrong answer because that's not right.
Right. Right.
And remember, classroom learning, and I am the worst student for classroom learning, simply because if I didn't like the instructor, I didn't learn.
Yes.
I'm a guy, and guys have a switch in their head that when they hear noise, they flip the switch and their ears shut off. It works every time, honest to God. If somebody sits beside me and I really don't like what they're saying, I literally just mentally flip my switch and I smile and I nod and I go off on my day. Same thing with an instructor in an educational institution. I don't like the way they're talking to me. I don't like the material that they're presenting. They're boring as heck, and they're really, they're just not pleasant to look at.
Right.
I'm not interested. Not interested.
Right.
Online training doesn't have those issues.
Right. Okay. Why is that though? Like, I mean, if you have online training and you could imagine if there's an instructor sitting in front, like what we are right now, sharing, and I think this leads me to my next question. Now, a lot of employers in Asia tend to have this comment. The reason why they don't believe totally in online learning is because of the millennial factor, like you mentioned, Ken. The millennials have short time span. The millennials, they get uneasy, they get impatient, they're always first impression basis. So what employers have shared with me is that, millennials think that they're multitaskers, but in reality they're not. They're just easily distracted. And you're saying that, because of the Sesame Street, how they grew up, where they learn everything in 2-minute sound bites. How do you get people glued to want to learn online and not be distracted? Because I can be on my phone right now. I can be WhatsApping my girlfriend. I can be WhatsApping my buddies while I'm learning or pretending to be learning. What is your view on that, about them getting easily distracted?
Okay, so let's go back to the traditional way of actually taking a course or being taught. Generally speaking, what they do is an instructor, they will introduce a topic and they lead you down a path. Don't tell you about.
Right, they lead you to tell you about, right.
Exactly. First of all, they just start talking and it's like, oh, it's like a boring person telling you a story, or somebody making a short story really long. And it's painful to listen to. You don't really know where they're going to go with it. You don't really understand the applicability of what they're saying. How many times have you ever sat in a college or a high school or elementary school course and you thought, I'm never going to use this. I am never, ever going to use this. And what the heck does this mean to me? Right. And so in reality, what your brain is saying to you is a not natural emotional reaction. But basically, you're confused.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
You don't know, you really don't understand what is being explained to you. You don't know how to use it. And so you're searching for
a meaning.
What's in it for me?
Yep.
And what am I going to do
with physics and additional mathematics?
And calculus.
Calculus, there you go.
Don't get me started. Okay, so here's the deal. Here's the difference between traditional learning and online learning. And good online learning actually has to be able to do the following in a very, very crisp, clear perspective. They need to be able to introduce the topic of learning. They need to be able to have a section that covers the theory of what you're going to cover.
Okay.
Right. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. The section, exactly. It needs to introduce the theory of the topic and a lead into the practical applicability of what you're learning. So introduce the topic, give me some theory, give me some practical application, give me some activities that are going to reinforce both the theory and the practical perspective, and then assess me based on a clear understanding of the practical applicability. So for example, if I was to take a calculus course, and calculus really is designed to make you think, or even a philosophy course, same thing. At the end of the day, I need to understand, why am I doing this, but what am I going to use it? And how am I going to use it? And I'll tell you, calculus is a funny, bizarre, same thing with physics. But at the end of the day, it's not about the physical movement of numbers and calculations. It's about, how do you think?
Yeah, how do you think? Right.
It is teaching you to take a subject and realize that it is something much more than what it looks like. And
Right.
how, first of all, to understand it, and then second of all, how are you ever going to use it? And the truth be told, you probably, unless you are a scientist or an engineer, you'll never use calculus.
Right.
However, when you are faced with, I'm going to give you an example. You have a cash flow problem in a business that you are managing.
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand that your sales are slow, if the money is not going into your bank account. So you need to take a step back and look at the business process. How are you selling? How are your customers using your products? All of a sudden, it is something much more. And if you actually went to a course on calculus and somebody says to you, we're now going to talk about cash flow,
Yep.
you would be
Ka-ching.
very confused. You would be confused at first, but it's all about the thought process
Right.
of learning. And a good digital e-learning course has theory, has a title and has theory and has activities and practical application, and has an assessment that allows you to, and I use this term all the time, it allows you to operationalize the course in a manner that allows you to apply your own technique.
How do you do that?
Because you become a master at the topic that you've learned.
Right.
So for example, let's just take a topic of a leadership topic called perceptions. Perceptions is your concept and your thoughts and your sort of ideas on a given topic.
Right.
And how you view a certain situation. You see two employees fighting in the parking lot at after work at 6 o'clock. Why are they fighting in the parking lot? Well, you obviously you don't know, but your perception initially is, oh, better phone the police. There's two guys fighting in the parking lot. I'm assuming there's two guys, so it's just two guys fighting in the parking lot. Going to call the police, going to suspend them, going to fire them, going to do all these nasty things. In reality, you don't know that these two, they might have had one of them could have sold something to the other, and the deal didn't go through. There could be something. Maybe they were fighting over the same girl. Maybe they were fighting over the same guy living in North America. Who knows? Maybe they were fighting over something that happened in the workplace that they didn't like. You don't know. And the point being about perceptions, as an example of a learning course, is what is perceptions? What is the theory of perception? What is the practical application? And it allows you to take a step back and go, yes, two people were fighting in the parking lot, but in reality, that's the end of the story. What was before that? And what was before that should not be jumped to conclusions. We need to have a thought process to go through and look at that and to discuss it as adults, and to have a course and remedy. Today, employees who work for a company, they get paid to physically show up and perform a task.
Right.
Fair statement? Right. Okay. Do they get paid to show up and have, go to birthday parties? No. Do they get paid to goof off and flit around all day long and go shopping? No. They're paid to fulfill a task. And sometimes those tasks come with benefits, which could mean, they're going to go for training. They're going to get paid vacation, or they're going to get some business trip that allows them to spend a couple of days in a nice place with a couple of possibly family members or whatever. But at the end of the day, they get paid to do a task. And here in North America, there's a huge sort of underlying social thing. When you retire, I spent 30 years with the company and the company didn't give me anything. And I kind of look at them and I go, they paid you for 30 years.
Right.
You got paid every day.
Right. Yeah.
You had benefits your entire life, like cake and a watch. You know what? Your colleagues really need to sort of be a little bit more collaborative, and you need to work with people and treat your employer with a little bit more respect. And I struggle with people's perceptions on that, but that's just my perception. But again, I'm circling back about perception as a clear course and as a clear sort of subject of learning. So title, theory, practical application, and an assessment that allows you to understand the difference. Once you have that skill, it becomes part of your technique of being a better trained person.
Okay. Now here's the crispy part right here. It's great. We have seen how online learning could affect people's reflection, self-assessment. Amazing. How do we motivate them to go into online learning in the first place? Because a lot of companies are trying that right here in Malaysia. How do you do that? What are some of the best practices out there?
So this actually did come up when I was speaking at the conference in Malaysia, and one of the very first questions was, how does online learning or e-learning differ from regular learning, and how do you make people do it? And at the end of the day, you need to have courses that are meaningful to them. That's number one. But number two, and this is what I said, what do you do with them today? People use training or learning as an excuse to not have to babysit their employees. I gave you this course, and they use it as a false motivator. So, we send you for training. We've got an internal or an external trainer doing the course. You get to go and sit in a classroom for a week, and you get free lunch for a week.
Right. Yep.
Wrong motivators.
Right.
Totally wrong. Totally wrong. If you've got mandatory training as a group, this is what I would do. You need to express it to them that it's a town hall style of learning. Everybody's going through it. You're not going to be the exception, and you may not be able to get a lot out of it, but it's going to be more information than you knew before. Check. Okay, got it. Then you're going to have the kind of training where the employee or the employer says, we've identified a skills gap.
Right.
In group. We're going to bring in a trainer, and we want you to actually be better at your job, and we want you to be better as a person. If they had expressed, and most employers expressed it to the employee, we want you to be better as a person because the skills that we're going to give you are transferable. Every employee would sign up because they're getting something that they get to keep.
Right. Okay.
They're not getting something shoved down their throat.
Right.
And I'm using North American terms when I say that, so you understand what I mean. But how do you get people to be or embrace online training? Tell them what's in it for them. Tell them what's in it for them. Give it to them in such a way that is not inconvenient and is not difficult to use. And mentor them, coach them, don't beat them. Work with them to understand that this is a new technology. And so you're not going to be in a classroom, and this is what we're going to do. And in some cases, what I also recommend is have almost like I call it a buddy system, but you have small groups of 3 and allow them to work collectively as a small group instead of allowing them to operate individually. And I'll tell you why I do that. Because in a classroom, when you sit down, you usually look for a seat by yourself if you don't know anybody, and you hope to God nobody sits beside you. Because, right? Or number 2, you go to a course with somebody you do work with or you might know of, or you sit beside somebody who's really attractive and hoping that they talk to you. And in reality, what you do is you form a little study group of your own. So why would you think online training would be any different? You need to put the humanity into e-learning in order for it to be successful. Otherwise, you're actually sort of demotivating your staff.
All right. 2 questions, Ken. Excellent. 2 questions. Number 1, the first question is, what is not a difficult online learning? If you could describe that. What is not a difficult online learning? Number 2 question you just number 2 question I have for you is, you said inject humanity into online learning. How do we do that? Back to you.
Okay. So let's hit the first one, and you might have to remind me about the second question.
We'll do that.
I'll go on that. Okay.
Humanity.
So how do you? Let me answer the second question first. How do you inject humanity? Help your employees, manage your employees, or be self-managed so that you understand what you're going to achieve by taking the course. Frequently, employees don't understand what they're doing.
Yep.
I got told I have to take this course. Why am I taking this course? I've worked, most people I've worked with in the past, I don't understand why I'm taking this course. I just have to go sit there, or I have to do some stupid thing online. I don't know why the hell I'm doing it. And it really is just a waste of my time.
Right, right. The purpose is not there, clarity.
Right, right. Because we've used training to be a babysitter for our employees, which is the wrong perspective. We need to focus in on just, it's either information. Remember what I said at the very beginning. It's either competency-based, so it's going to make me a better person. It's product and service training, which is going to help me be a better cultural employee, or it's going to be just general information. And I'll tell you, if we would actually tell employees that, they understand that they have into it. So competency-based is the highest level of learning that they can have, simply because they're going to be better at themselves and what they can do. Information helps them or helps a company actually sort of mitigate a potential problem or mitigate some sort of piece of legislation. An example would be, health and safety workers in Malaysia all have that health and safety card that they have to go through, and they have to keep up to date. It's a 2-year renewal process, blah, blah, blah. But I'll tell you what, at the end of the day, the last thing that you want to have is a scaffold collapse and 5 people die. What you really want to be able to say to employees is, we have a mandatory update. We need you to go through a 2-hour session, and here's why you need to do it. Because A, it's a condition of your employment. B, it's a health and safety issue. And C, we want to have a safe workplace where you are knowledgeable. End of story.
Excellent. Excellent.
But let's go back to the very first question and repeat the question again for me, because I'm struggling with it.
No worries. What is not a difficult online learning? What makes online learning not difficult?
What makes it not difficult is its accessibility.
It's flexibility.
No, it's accessibility.
Accessibility. Okay, see, interesting, right?
I'm going to give you an example. In the 60s, 70s, 80s, I'll say up to middle 90s, if you wanted to get a diploma, a certificate, some kind of certification, a university degree, a college diploma, whatever you wanted to get, you had to physically leave your house, take a bus, a plane, a train, a car, a horse, a boat, and you had to physically go to a school, and you had to sit there all day, sitting beside somebody you may or may not know, sitting in something that's very hot and uncomfortable. It's an environment you don't like. It's a topic you're not really sure of. You don't want to fail because you paid for it, whatever. Those types of environs play on the learning. So you're not even ready to learn.
Right.
You're just not. With online learning, you could take the same content in a different format coming through an electronic channel. I could sit here in my pajamas and take a course and get my certification. I would be out of my mind to not do that.
Right.
As long as the quality of the course is, and again, it gets back to, how is the course structured? Title, theory, practical application, solid assessment. Give me a linear format. Tell me how you're going to do it, that I can read that at the very beginning. Don't lead me down a garden path and tell me this is the best course you're ever going to take in your whole life. How many times have you ever had an instructor tell you, at the end of this course, this is the only course you're ever going to remember? When and it's just like, really?
Whatever.
Really? Yeah, whatever. YouTube, baby. That's my university, and that is what people learn from today. But at the end of that, you don't get a certificate. You don't get a competency-based diploma watching YouTube videos. So the bottom line is, there are courses and most topics that you can either have. And in some cases, there are courses or topics where online learning can only augment an in-person session. And it's like, okay, so let's just talk about this webinar. We're not talking about, I could run our perceptions course through this webinar, but I would prefer to not only have some visual, but everybody could be online. They could be looking at this. I could be leading them through. We could be having an open conversation, which allows a God forbid we actually get together and talk these days, a human social interaction versus a social media interaction.
Interesting.
You go into Pavilion, the Pavilion shopping center in Kuala Lumpur, and you walk through, and I kind of snickered and laughed because it's the same here, it's the same there. You walk through the coffee shops, and everybody is sitting there like this.
Playing with their phone. Yep, playing with their phone.
Their husband, their wife, their girlfriend, their boyfriend, their mistress, I don't care what it is, they're sitting 2 feet away and they're texting each other. I don't get it.
Yeah, playing with the phones.
I don't get it. And at the end of the day, learning needs to be information needs to be conveyed. It needs to be done structurally. It needs to be done with intent, and it needs to be done that allows you to interpret and understand. It's no different. So to answer your question, digital learning will not replace all learning. It is digital learning or e-learning. It really is taking learning and making it available through technology. And in some cases, technology means physically leaving your laptop and going into a classroom to talk to someone. That human sort of element is ideal.
Ken,
so
you talked
about away from that.
No worries, but Ken, you talked about online learning. You talked about accessibility. It's one of the keys to making it really deliver a great experience for the learners. Let's talk about right now the interface of online learning, because one thing that really caught my attention was that you mentioned about how as much as we want to invest in online learning, we cannot discount the human interaction. And you mentioned some key points where even in online learning, you could have forums online, you could have communities online, and you as the tutor or the trainer, you are guiding the participants through their learning. Like unlike our webinar right here, in a normal e-learning suite, you will have presentations, which will be projected simultaneously as you are lecturing or as you're giving your input. You may be able to command certain instant response from your trainees who will be able to share their views with you. Having said that, Ken, seeing that you have traveled around the world and you are a pioneer in online learning with your company right now, what are some of the interfaces that you see work with online learning? Like, let's say if I am company ABC and I am going to invest in creating an online learning suite for my employees, what should I have in that suite?
Okay, so there's really a couple of things that you need to have, and the first things first, and it's like picture in your mind walking into an office building or an office, and there's a whole bunch of brochures on the wall.
Right.
It's like 6, 7, 8, 9 brochures. You're going to be attracted to the one that is most visually pleasing, and it doesn't matter what the topic is.
That's right.
Got it? You're going to pick the colors you like. Oh, or you walk into a car dealership. You're going to pick the brochures that have the best looking cars, that's going to improve my image. Oh, it's got all the features that I want. So developing and creating online training is exactly the same. It's got to be visually appealing.
Nice.
It's got to be able to hold their interest. It's got to have to it frequently. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to try and be as nice as possible, because it's not always nice sometimes. Most companies have training departments, and the people that are in those training departments are not qualified to be there.
Right.
They're not. They are the best. They are the best employees who get promoted into a training role simply because they excelled at their job. In reality, they have no clue how to present, how to construct a course, but they may be good at presenting the course.
Right.
And at the end of the day, the employee is either fixated on how they were spoken to because they like the trainer, but the material was weak. And frequently that's e-learning. It looks pleasing, but there's no meat. I didn't learn anything.
Right.
I was entertained, therefore it was just information. Or, so to answer your question, it's got to be aesthetically which means visually pleasing. Number
Yep.
two, able to explain to the participants what the course is about, how are they going to get graded, right? And what are they going to do with it?
Right.
And that has to happen very quickly at the very beginning. It's like if I pick up a book,
Yep.
I pick up a pocketbook, or I download a book now. But let's just imagine the days where you'd go and buy a novel, especially if you're going to go fly somewhere. You're going to get a book. I would look at the cover. Oh, the cover looks good. I know the author. And then I turn it over and I look at the synopsis of the story. And I go, oh, okay, that's something I might be interested in. And that's how I would be, that's how I'd make my purchase. So aesthetically pleasing, tell them the roadmap for this course as quickly as possible. And once you've told them the roadmap, then lead them through the theory, then the practical application, and then assess them solidly and not, don't deceive them.
Right.
And I say that because most corporate trainers attempt to deceive the student, especially when they're doing product and service training. What they'll do is they will bait the employee. They will make them give them stupid questions to make them second guess themselves. Those are the wrong types of assessments to be giving to people. That's like, here's a whole bag, or here's a bowl of lollipops, and you come here, you call a child over here, you want a lollipop, and then you hold it up over your head so that they can't get it. That's not the purpose of training, and that's not the purpose of learning. The purpose of learning is to show them what you've got, make it pleasing, tell them what you're going to train them, do it in a form and fashion that is engaging, and that does not mean making it like a cartoon that they can sit there. That's not a video. And so that is, if you understand that, and most people who have teachers' backgrounds, so they've gone to teachers' school, they've gone to teachers' college, they've got degrees in education, or they got actually, and I'm going to say this, even though it's against, what I think, but people who actually have degrees in philosophy are actually really good instructors, simply because they can do that as long as they are being managed to give the proper flow of a course. If you leave them to create whatever they want, they'll have a good topic and make a really bad course. And that is most of what is online today. It's a good topic, but a really bad course.
Right. Interesting. I'm just going to ask this right now, Ken. For a lot of Malaysian companies, sometimes they do not design their own online learning modules, which is fine, which is why companies like ours exist, right? Now, let's talk about the employers or the client right now. What should they look out for when they select a service provider to provide them with online learning solutions? Please.
I think so number one, the employer needs to understand what kind of gaps they have in their own learning. And I'm going to tell you, before I go too far into this sort of conversation, I get asked all the time to go in and consult. I get paid to literally tell somebody what's wrong with their learning. But before I even tell them that, I go, what do you want to do with it? With what you have today? So I listen to what their sort of plans are, or what their vision is. So they got a vision, great. Now, okay, let's look at what you got today. Let's look at where you want to go. Here's your gaps. And I will tell them, training is not a babysitter for your employees. Do not use training or learning as an excuse to ignore your employees. Let's give your employees a course, or give them and I tend to use this term a lot as well, a learning path, so that they can be better as people, not employees. Because if you actually invest in the person, they will be loyal. They will be loyal. They will stick around. They're not going to be there forever. And I'll tell you what, you don't want your employees to be there forever. You want them to go and grow. It's an employee working for an employer is, no offense, it's no different from human relationships. We probably, and I'm going to say this, we probably are not with the very first boyfriend or girlfriend we ever had in our lives. Why not? Why not? Changed. They changed. We either got left behind or we left for something else. It just wasn't working. What's the difference between that and an employer? Well, the difference is I didn't fall in love with my employer per se, but the bottom line is we moved to grow.
Right.
And so we need to take advantage, we need to take more control of our own learning paths than allowing somebody else to say, you have to do this, you have to, you must, you need to.
Right.
It's not the same.
So it's like employees
Does that make sense?
needing to be aware of their own learning paths. Like, why are they spending time? Why are they investing their effort to learn something? It's not really to meet the KPIs of the companies, but it's for themselves to grow as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and it very well could be helping the employee meet the KPI of the company. I'm going to give you an example. I have met more C-level people, and I ask them, point blank, tell me about your learning and development program. And usually it catches them off guard when I say that. Okay, so tell me about the training program that you have internally. How big is it? Oh, we've got, product and service training, and we've got, some ad hoc stuff. And then, for specialized people, we allow them to get certification. We'll pay for that, usually as a tuition reimbursement type program. And I said, that's great. I said, how often, what's the adoption rate? How many people actually do the tuition refund? Oh, none. Oh, okay. So when people come to you and they say that they want training, how much did you spend last year in meeting those needs? I said, and I'm going to have to remind, and you do have 3,000 employees. I think we spent $200. $200, really? Okay, so how much did you spend on internal training last year? Oh, we spent $1.5 million. I said, but who did they teach? Because once they've been hired, there's nobody to teach. And your turnover rate is less than 1%. So what are they doing? I get met with a dead reaction. Oh, so I'm paying a bunch of people to sit there. Yeah, you are. You're paying somebody $1.5 million for them to sit there and do nothing all year long. Are you out of your mind? Does that make sense to you?
Right.
You have a resource, you don't use it, or if you do use it, they're doing the wrong things, and they're actually not fulfilling any level of value-added proposition into your organization. They're not contributing back to the organization. And that's where we have sort of really misaligned learning and development. Learning and development needs to be injecting new growth and new learning back into the organization in a calculated fashion where people are engaged and that they are making themselves better, which in turn makes the company better.
The company better.
That doesn't exist today, but that's what it should be. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, of course.
And you need to start slow. You cannot do this as a big bang theory, no pun intended. You have to start slow, and you actually have to do it with intent. And the people that are in your organization, if they do not have the same shared values, they need to be replaced. And I tell people more often, you need to be replaced. That person should not have that project. That person actually should be better off in this job over here. I didn't say fire them, just move them to this other job.
Right.
They're a good person. Don't throw, we have a phrase here, and I'm again, it's a North American phrase, so I'm going to be polite. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just don't get rid of the baby, but put the baby where it can contribute better.
Right. Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you, Ken. Ken, we only have time for one more question. I'd just like to ask you, if a company were to come up to you and say, Ken, how do we do online learning? I mean, how do we start it? How do we make sure that it's a success? How do we even know if it's a success? What would your advice be?
Okay, so again, don't do the Big Bang Theory. So I'm going to recommend that they slowly develop it. And it could be, and again, it's sort of three things. You have to have the right intent. Number two, you don't implement e-learning in order to save money on trainers. So let's make that, so the right intent, so it's the intent on what you're trying to achieve, the intent in terms of utilization of current resources, be it trainers or whatever. Then you need to have good content. The content could be developed in-house, but it has to have a benchmark to be qualified against. So the content either is purchased externally from a third party, or you actually have you hire somebody that can actually do good content for you, and usually that is a contractor, just a temporary person to do that. And the third thing is sort of measuring the productivity or the adoption rate and the absorption rate. So the adoption of the new technology being an LMS or a platform for the delivery of training, but what is the absorption? So the absorption frequently is never managed. Most employees who work for a company, when they are told that they're going for training, their manager never asks them, or maybe they do, but they rarely ask them, what did you learn? Because the employees can't remember what they learned. They can't remember what they learned because they didn't learn anything useful from their job. What they learned, and I kid you not, and I laugh because I ask people that question all the time. What did you learn from that course? Oh, the instructor was really good looking. Really good looking. And what was the topic of the course? Oh, something to do with customer experience metrics. And was there anything that you could implement today that you learned in that course? All I know is I want to have another course with that instructor.
Sex sells.
I'm just like, really? And it's not even just about the physical. It's about they were actually entertained.
Right.
It's like they went to a show. They went to a Broadway musical.
Right.
And they called it training.
Right.
And I'm thinking, I paid, and again example, as an employer, I paid $500 per person for you to sit in a classroom for 1 day, 2 day, 3 days. And all you can tell me about is what the trainer wore and what you had for lunch. That doesn't make sense to me. And that therein lies the disconnection between learning and development and improving your people. So my point being, and this is really, really important, go back to your people when they finish their training and say to them, I need you to have a tangible skill at the end of the course, which hopefully the employer vetted the course before they went, or the employer actually took the course, and then work with your employees to help operationalize what they learned.
Right.
Show me, tell me, show me, help me, work with me. And most employers don't do that. And that's where learning gets a bad rap. And it doesn't matter whether it's an online course or an in-classroom course. So the only difference is the medium, and you need to coach, mentor, and lead employees, and lead either or be self-led so that you get what you want from the right course. Because in an online world, there's lots of really bad courses.
Yeah.
A lot.
I agree. Ken, thank you so much for your time. Now, before we go, I would just like to ask you a question. Let's talk about your company. Let's share with us your pitch. What does your company do? Because I know the reason I approach you and I feature you right now on Talent Breakthrough. Again, thank you again for your time. Wow us. Tell us more about your company and where can we find you?
Okay, so Orion Learning and our partners in Southeast Asia, which is a company called Validity Learning. They are based in Melbourne, Australia. So I'll come back to that in a few minutes. But our company is a company that has 900 accredited digital courses that offers not only the individual course, but we also can bring some of those courses together to create a program. We have some of those that are pre-done, but we can also create a specialized program for an employer. But we also are an organization that offers certification courses such as change management and project management, PMP, and Prince2. But we also are an examination institute. And when you take those you put them together, that is not a normal digital learning company. Yeah. When I say an examination institute, when you want to go and write your Prince2 exams, we actually can coordinate the management of those exams either by doing it through a web proctor, or we can deliver and invigilate the exam in person. And the examinations are governed by the accrediting bodies that are responsible for those courses. So right. Prince2 is part of Axelos, which is based in London, and the examination is actually controlled by a global organization based in Greece called PeopleCert. But Axelos and PeopleCert work together, and they've delegated their authority to Orion Learning. So we do not provide fluffy entertainment type training to people. We provide competency-based skills training that allows you to find what you want, understand the theory, find the practical application, and get assessed properly so that you actually get your course certificate. You can have a program with a series of course certificates, or you can achieve an international certification through us. And that is what makes us different. And before I go too far down, we've used the words competency-based learning repeatedly throughout this broadcast. And competency-based learning is to improve your job skills. Accredited competency-based learning is when you take a competency course, competency-based course, and it is accredited by an international association or organization. So all of our courses are accredited. So they're accredited by either Axelos or APMG International, or an organization called ISSA, which is the International Service Standards Alliance. And what they have done is the courses were submitted to them. They looked at the curriculum for each course for a program, and they approved the curricula or the curriculum for that course or program, and they allowed us to put their seal of approval on it.
Right.
I can't tell you any other company that does that.
Right.
Also, we have international customer service certification programs that follow an ISO standard. Now, ISO, frequently to millennials, is not necessarily a term that is common, but International Standards Organization, it is a Swiss-based global organization, and frequently ISO is meant for manufacturing quality, but they have thousands of standards for organizations to try and follow, including learning and development and business process and finance and all kinds of things. And we need to sort of get back to basics with millennials, because it's not all about Pokemon Go. You know what I'm saying? It's not all about, you know, having a good time and finding out the next app, because we're not all going to be Mark Zuckerbergs of the world or whoever. So that is who Orion Learning is, and it's a bit of a difficult sell for us to be in the marketplace, because we do get called in and people ask us, what's different between Orion Learning and any other learning company? And I go, our stuff's accredited, it's transportable, it's applicable to any organization, and it's competency based. And then I shut up, and then they kind of look at me, and frequently I know they don't understand what I just said, so I have to explain it to them.
Right.
And so I'm not focused in on it's entertaining, it's cute, it's pretty, and you can get rid of all of your trainers. No, you can't get rid of your trainers. Keep them, but migrate them into a different world. So in Southeast Asia, we have an exclusive partner, which is Validity Learning, and it's validitylearning.com, or you can look at our website, which is orionelearning.com. Or you can send me an email directly, and if I know that you're approaching me from Southeast Asia, Malaysia, wherever this webinar is going to be shown, I can put you in touch with our local partners. Or even if you just have a simple question, go ahead, ask me, and I'll respond to you. I may be a little slow in responding, but I will respond to you.
How can they reach out to you?
You could send you could, let me just see here. I could just leave my email address in the chat so that people can send me an email directly.
Kavanagh at orionelearning.com.
Absolutely, and you know, if you want to see our website, there is our web URL and our partner in. I type almost as fast as I talk sometimes. There's our
orionlearning.com and validitylearning.com. There you go. Both addresses.
Yeah, exactly, and you'll be able to find, you know, hopefully something. And you know, if anybody is on here from an employer that's listening to this, if you need consulting, just go ahead and ask us. We'll be glad to come in and help you help us, because moving to digital learning or e-learning is not easy. Don't do the Big Bang Theory. Start slow, measure your progress, but have a longer range plan than sort of delivering one course. The delivery of one course doesn't make logical sense. And actually, before I go, and this is something sort of new in North America, and I want to throw that out to let people know
The juicy
it
part.
potentially, well, it could be coming to Malaysia too, is organizations are mentally married to having their own learning management system. They like the concept of, we're a good company, we're big enough, we're mature enough, we should have our own LMS. And
Right.
I'm here to tell you that a learning management system is nothing more than a big money-sucking machine.
Wow, why is that? You should have brought this up just now.
Because in order to run a learning management system, you need to have IT support. You're going to have to buy new servers, so you're going to have IT technical people, either on the coding side or the development side or the implementation side. But then you're going to have to completely change the skill sets of your trainers. They will be making courses, possibly, well, you'd have to give them software to make courses. They could use Captivate or Articulate or any of a gazillion different authoring tools, but you have to train them on how to use it. And that training is horrifically expensive. It is better to allow them to go off and do it in a very different form and fashion, but allow somebody else to host it so you don't have to have that cost. An example, there is an organization in Malaysia that I am more than familiar with, that we have been working with for before I was there last December. And we were hoping that they would just use our LMS. And in reality, they went out and they bought an SAP or an Oracle. They bought a large ERP LMS, and they paid in excess of $1 million for it.
Wow.
Do you know how many employees you could hire for $1 million?
Yeah.
A lot. Do you know how much content you could have access to for $1 million?
Yeah.
A lot. And in reality, what they did was, because they had a perceived need for control of a technical system that has a lifespan of this long, they spent all that money for nothing. And so, you know, no offense, Orion Learning could have done the same thing for less than $200,000.
Right.
So learning needs to be factual based, and you need to be specific about it. But also, the other thing that is coming down the pipe is MOOCs, and you need to be aware of what MOOCs are. MOOCs are mass online courses, MOOCs, and they are like forums where online learning is free and it's for the masses, and you just go in and take a course. Frequently, none of it is accredited, but you're going to see a shift very soon in North America to free education. And MOOCs will be taking on some of that. And so will there still be space for learning such as corporate learning and learning that Orion does? Yes, because not all courses will be covered, and it'll take years for it to be developed. But those are sort of the two big takeaways. Technology is not your friend. It is a temporary tool. Because I don't use a Sony Walkman anymore. Can you imagine why I don't have a Sony Walkman anymore? And if you're a millennial, you may be looking at each other going, well, what's a Sony Walkman? But that's how we used to listen to music. We didn't have iPods. We didn't have tablets. I still have an Nikon 35 millimeter camera that takes film.
Right.
What do I do with it?
Yeah.
I can't do anything with it, but I can tell you that it cost me $1,500 40 years ago, and now it's worth nothing. So technology is not your friend. Technology is an enabler for you to proceed to the next level. That's all it is. Airplane ticket. It's just a ticket to ride, and at the end of it, it's useless and it gets replaced. And so courseware actually should be ageless. You may have some updates, but it really should be ageless. And finding good quality courseware that is ageless and is delivered in a timely fashion that can be controlled and measured and monitored is ideal for any organization.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ken, for your sharing today and for really breaking the ice. I mean, answering all those tough questions about motivating people to go into online learning. What makes a great online learning interface? How do we actually start embarking on online learning? Like you said, don't go for the big bang. Don't just start off with purchasing LMS systems that you don't really understand how to use. In the end, just start small. and then start to
small.
build that culture and condition among your staff, among your colleagues, for them to start learning online. Again, thank you, Ken, so much for your time. And again, I know it's just the start of the day for you over there. It's Thursday in Canada. Well, for us here in Malaysia, we are winding down now. I want to thank you so much, and thank you to all of you who have been following this channel, this broadcast on talentbreakthrough.com, brought to you by Thriving Talents. For those of you who are unable to join us right now, don't worry, this recording will be sent to you. You would have the replay of this. You can watch it like a gazillion times so that you can really capture the information. It'll also be available on podcast where you get to hear to our voices. Again, thank you, Ken, for making time. And from all of us here in Thriving Talents, Michael Teo here, signing off. And thank you, Ken, for being us with here again today.
Thank you.
See you, man. Bye.
Bye-bye.